All right, welcome to the monthly market report for April 2023. I'm so glad to have you on. So thankful for all those that follow the monthly market report and watch each month so that you can be the most educated professional on these topics, really the topics that matter in real estate. So I'm going to hop right in and I'm going to use a graphic that we used last month and sort of update you on our team. Research team has updated this, and I think it's important. It's this slide right here. It's the demand-based rate environment that we're in. Okay, so when we were together last time, sort of had trended up in the average mortgage rate, and since we've talked, we're sort of trending down and causing a lot of people to have questions. How do I communicate this effectively? How do I sort of guide my clients through this? And there are a couple of things here that I want to point out. One, if you haven't seen this graphic, you can go back and watch last month's monthly market report, and I break it down. But things sort of the dividing line between red and green is at 6.5%. And last time we talked, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate was knocking on the door of 7 and kind of flirted around with going over 7. And now today, we've had several significant things happen in the economy. And we sit now below 6.5%, even as I'm recording this, watching the 10-year fall, and certainly we're seeing a more positive rate environment, a good demand environment here for those that are out shopping. So how do I communicate this with those that I'm working with? And I think Sam Cater from Freddie Mac gave us a great perspective on this. I want to read it to you. He said, "There's turbulence in the financial markets is putting significant downward pressure on rates, which should benefit borrowers in the short term." He's absolutely right. We can't become an expert maybe on the secondary market and everything that's happening in banking, but we can say that turbulence in those markets is boding well for mortgage rates. It's putting significant downward pressure on mortgage rates. Now, in just a minute, Kate's going to come on. She's going to talk about affordability, but as rates come down, it makes homes more affordable. That's a topic that we want to be educated on. But one of the things that people have said that I want to talk about for just a minute is the only way homes will become more affordable this year is if prices come down. And I don't believe that to be true because there are three factors that influence affordability. Kate will go over these. They are prices, their interest rates, and their wages. Okay, but let's break down prices real quick and really what's happening right now with home prices. If I were to tell the story of home prices in this country, I would maybe give you perspective of last fall. And I would go back to some headlines around October and in September that were, kind of out in the market. And they were this right here. Topics like or headlines like U.S. home prices could plunge 20%. Says the Dallas Fed. If you remember that Dallas Fed article that came out and kind of stirred everybody up, Fortune came out and said there are 210 housing markets at risk at losing 15 to 20%, in home price declines. Other, articles talking about homes could lose a massive amount of value, kind of out there everywhere. Why is this important? It's important for this reason. I read an article from a coaching organization, Rewire. They do a fair amount of work in our business and housing finance and coaching people and sort of understanding how the brain works. And they said this. They said, neuroscientists have found that people spend about 90% of their lives using what's called narrative circuitry rather than direct experience. And so in other words, we spend 90% of our lives telling ourselves what's happening. When I read this, it certainly resonated with me, and maybe somebody listening, you listening right now, you understand that, right? Maybe you thought something like, I would have said this differently, or you told yourself a story about what is happening. The same is happening in our business, I believe, relative to home prices, right? If I read an article last fall saying home prices could fall by as much as 20%, maybe I'm telling myself that's what's going to happen. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We got some of the best home price research and updates in the last couple of weeks. Our KCM research team has gone through that and really built some great graphics that allow you to step in and say, here's exactly what's happening with home prices. So as we kick that off, I want to start here. It's with a Case-Shiller home price appreciation year over year look in the top 20 cities. Now, the reason this is so important, you look there, what do you see? You see a lot of green in the top 20 cities. You see some red there in West Coast cities, Portland, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle. That's year over year comparing January of 2023 to January of 2022. The national number there, you see in the upper right-hand corner of appreciation over the last year, 3.8%. Why is this so important? So important because it's nowhere near what all those headlines said in the fall, right? They said 20% depreciation. Sure, there's some markets that have seen depreciation. Yeah, a few West Coast-based markets that are heavy tech markets right now, but it's not what's happening in the country. It's certainly not the national average. But there are people in those markets that are experiencing that. And I'm not trying to say that's not important. It is if you're in that market. And understanding that is important. Selma Hepp from CoreLogic said this: declines in the West are due to the tech industry slowdown and a severe lack of affordability. Kate's going to get into that in just a minute, after several decades of undersupply. So understanding that, being able to explain that to the clients that you serve is critically important. If we continue this look at year-over-year prices from FHFA, we see the same story. Pacific region being flat, every other region there, January over January, appreciating their national rate of appreciation 5.3%. So again, I'm going to go back to what we talked about on the monthly market report. What many of you talk to your clients about is we don't see that happening. We now have proof of that year over year. I would use this opportunity to be vocal in the market and talk about that. If we start to look at the month over month pricing situation, it's a little bit different. And this is the same look from Case-Shiller, month over month in January. This information runs a few months in arrears because it's same home sales. It's the best information you can get on pricing. And what do you see? The overwhelming majority, slight month over month depreciation, not this runaway scenario of depreciation. You see a few markets in the green: Atlanta, Boston, Charlotte, Chicago, and Cleveland, slight appreciation. The others, slight depreciation. Okay, so that's month over month. If we look at the same with FHFA, we see sort of a mixed bag there as well. Some regions being down and some regions being up, some regions being flat. Now, here's the case I would make, and I'm going to give you sort of a month over month look over the last year, because I think the case we can make is some of the worst depreciation is behind us. And it's this look right here. This is month over month appreciation or depreciation from FHA and Case-Shiller going all the way back to January of last year. And so what do you see? What's the story here? Well, we start off the year in 2022, great appreciation, come to about the middle of the year in July, and we start to see that turn happening, right? And most of the depreciation peaked in the fall in both of these graphics, in August, September area, and has kind of stabilized and not taken these massive dips going forward since the fall. Why is this important? This is important to understand that prices in this country are not in a free fall. Home prices, no stretch of it. We've got the proof of it here. And I'm not saying this is something that you don't already know possibly, but I'm giving you the factual backup and basis for how you would be confident about explaining this. This is always the area that we talk about, the curse of knowledge. Just because you know that, don't assume those that you're working with know that as well. So understanding that perspective, what happened in the first part of last year and what's happened since about the middle of last year is very, very important. But again, let's go back to what all the headlines said last fall. Homes are going to lose a massive amount of value, 20%, 15 to 20%. Now we have the official numbers. All in, this comes from Black Knight. Home prices nationally are now down 2.6% from their 2022 peak. Down 2.6%, not down 20%, not anywhere close to it. Moody's said this. Moody's Analytics repeat sales home price index are down 2% from their peak last July. So again, nowhere near what was said. Freddie Mac reported, this was in the Calculated Risk blog, that its national home price index is down 2.5% from its June 2022 peak. If you're lining all these up and build them into a graph, oh, by the way, our team did that. This is what this looks like. Nowhere near what some of the headlines, what some of the doomsayers said last fall would happen in real estate. We've seen 2 to 2.5%, depending on what you look at here, depreciation in residential real estate. And I think the case could be made that the worst of that is behind us. Headlines often do more to terrify people than to actually clarify what's happening. And that's our job. We now have the information we need to go out and say, this is exactly what happened. I told you what was going to happen. I said homes weren't going to lose 20%. Now we have the proof of that, and I hope you'll use it. I'm going to turn it over to Kate here to talk about affordability. This is a topic that's being discussed in the news, and a lot of people are concerned about it. What is happening to affordability across the country? I'll let Kate take it from here.
Thank you so much, David. I think when we start to think about rates, prices, people have a lot of questions about affordability. The biggest one being, will we see affordability improve this year? And, as we start to break this down, we're definitely in a very rate sensitive environment right now. And I think the common misconception about affordability is that prices have to go way up or way down to really move the needle on affordability. And that's just not truly the case. Now, it's important to kind of start this conversation with, how do we measure affordability? Well, it does come into play with prices. So it's a combination of prices, rates, and wages. And when you put those three factors together, that's what gives us that affordability equation. And, right now we're in that rate sensitive environment. And that's been the biggest driver of how affordability has really shifted over the past year. That and the fact that we're seeing wages increase. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into this equation of how do we measure affordability. And that's really what I want to break down today, because in this rate sensitive environment, mortgage rates are truly the key factor that are driving today's affordability. So let's break down what's happening with affordability right now, and then talk about, will we see affordability improve this year? I want to start with this quote from Realtor.com, and it says, each downward tick in mortgage rates is met with increased buyer demand, as many eager home shoppers take advantage of the slightly lower cost of financing a home. So as we've seen a little bit of that easing in mortgage rates over the past few months, that little bit of coming off that peak and that turbulence in the market that is impacting mortgage rates, more and more people are able to afford financing a home. It costs less to finance that loan because as rates adjust, that's what happens. And so what I want to show you is how that's impacting affordability and the signs that we're seeing that affordability is improving. Now, hear me loud and clear. We are not out of the woods. I am not saying that affordability is no longer a challenge, but we're definitely seeing it move in the right direction. So let's take a look at that. This is home ownership affordability, and it walks through the year-over-year declines that we've truly seen since the beginning of 2021, January 21 to January of 2023. So a 2-year period where, this is no surprise to you, it was more affordable to buy a home in January of 21 before mortgage rates ticked up significantly than it was, come last fall. Look at those really dark red bars. They dropped by almost 30%. So affordability dropped by nearly 30% in that period of time. But what do we see right now? We see that moving in the right direction. Those lighter red bars over on the red coming back up, showing that affordability is improving. And again, that is largely due to increasing wages in this rate sensitive environment when we see mortgage rates easing off their peak. Now, let's take a look at affordability in a longer term context. So if you follow along with us, you have seen this graph before. And this shows that affordability right now is at historic levels. It is at historic lows. So when we look at this graph, we look for, how high is the bar? The higher the bar, the more affordable it is to purchase a home. Now, those orange bars are when the housing market crashed. So that's when distressed properties, foreclosures, short sales dominated the market. That's when prices brought affordability to a much more affordable level. But we're in a different environment right now where it's largely based on mortgage rates and wages. So when we look at those lines over to the right, we can see that affordability is much, much lower as we've seen the volatility in mortgage rates over the past year. So let's break down the past year and take a more zoomed in look at those two bars. So this is showing again, affordability is historically low. This is the same housing affordability index, but it zooms in on a month over month basis. So we can see January of 2022, no surprise, bar is higher. It was more affordable to buy a home before rates more than doubled last year. We saw that affordability decline throughout the year, and now we see it moving in the right direction. We see it ticking back up. And the way that we break down this index put together by NAR is we look at that dotted line across the screen. That's the threshold on the index. And it measures a score of 100. And what 100 means is that the home buyer making the median priced income can afford to purchase the median priced home. So if it's the bar is up above that threshold, homes are more affordable. If it's down below, then qualifying is more challenging, and being able to afford a home is much more challenging. We've seen above and below that line over the past year, and we see it starting to tick back up. That January of 2023, that's the latest data we have on this. And that's when mortgage rates were in that 6 to 6.5% range. We saw them ease off their peak. Well, the good news is we're starting, even over the past couple of weeks, seeing mortgage rates ease back into those levels. That's largely due to the financial turbulence that we've seen in the market that David spoke about earlier. So rate sensitive environment truly impacting affordability right now. And when we talk about affordability, we also want to talk about monthly mortgage payments. So let me break down this data for you as well. At the end of the day, someone who's purchasing a home needs to be able to make their monthly payment. Bottom line, that's essential if they're going to buy a home. Now, that was much easier to do in January of 2021 when it was much more affordable to buy a home. We saw that creep up very significantly over the past couple of years. And the monthly mortgage payment, the median monthly mortgage payment, it peaked around October of last year. We saw much higher mortgage rates at that point. We had seen prices increasing. Well, now that we're seeing mortgage rates easing, we're seeing more neutral home prices, moderation in home prices. We're seeing wages increase. That monthly mortgage payment is coming back down. We're easing off that peak. So, that's about a $200 difference since last October. And so when every, percentage point counts in a mortgage rate, every dollar counts in a mortgage payment, this is really important news, really important information to be able to share with your clients so they can see how things are changing. Because if someone didn't qualify for a mortgage or couldn't afford that median monthly payment back last fall, maybe they can now. And having those conversations and being able to step in and share these visuals with your clients, so impactful as they're trying to figure out, can I buy a home right now? Should I buy a home right now? Understanding affordability is really, really essential, because if they're only looking at prices, then they may not understand the whole picture. And you can be the expert to help explain that and help show it. The visuals are the game changer. So let's talk about the next layer, which is median household income versus qualifying income. I love this graph because it really starts to show how this is so hyper local. We know that, mortgage rates and wages are a primary driver, but we also know that prices are doing very different things in different markets. And so when we talk about affording a home, this becomes really powerful. So what you're looking at here is the blue bars show median income in each region of the country. So those are the blue bars. We have the US total average over on the far left. Now the other bars, the green and the orange and the red, that's qualifying income for a median priced home. So what pops out to you as you look at this? Immediately, my eyes go to that red bar over on the right. It is much more expensive to purchase a home on the West Coast than it is in some of the other markets. So median priced home, people on the West Coast on average not making the income that it takes to qualify for a median priced home mortgage. That's really challenging in some of those markets. As we've seen prices accelerate more in some markets than others, this has been a bigger pain point in different regions of the country. Now, if you look at places like the Midwest and the South, It's the opposite. So those making the median price income should be able to qualify for a mortgage on the median priced home. So very, very local. This is where making sure that you understand the national perspective that your clients are hearing on the news, in the media, in their social media feeds, wherever it is that they're looking for information, that you can help explain what that means and then say, and I'm your local expert right here in our market, and I can help you understand exactly what's going on here. So being that local expert to guide your clients through this, mission critical. Now, let's take a look at one more piece, and this is the mortgage payment to income ratio, and it goes all the way back to 2000. This is put together by NAR, and their recommendation is that when someone purchases a home, that they spend no more than 25% of their income on principal and interest. So that's the bar that you see going across the middle of the screen, that 25% threshold. Now, what do we notice as we look at this? For a long period of time, we were under that 25% threshold. Homes were more affordable, and people could spend less than 25% of their income to purchase the median price home. Well, what do we know last fall? We ticked up above that threshold. So it became more challenging to buy a home. You know this. However, what I see as I look at this, again, moving in the right direction. We've come down off that peak underneath the threshold. Again, we are not out of the woods. It is still challenging and not as affordable to buy a home as it was a couple years ago, but we are moving in the right direction. And that's what's important to share with our clients right now. And then, of course, I want to end with this quote right here from NAR. It says, however, this rate drop was enough to make home buying affordable again for many Americans. So as we're looking at this rate sensitive environment that we're sitting in right now, keeping our eye on that, communicating that with our clients is really important, because some of these moments are making home buying more affordable. And for those who are ready to step in and ready to purchase a home, you as their expert in this process, making sure they understand how does affordability work, what's happening right now in the market, so you can guide them through that process, is absolutely mission critical. So as we wrap up today, I want to finish with one question for you. We're going to finish on a thought. And it's, what is the one thing that could stand in the way of your success this spring? And what I believe is that is your mindset. You know, there are challenges, no doubt, right now. What's happening with mortgage rates? What's happening with prices? Inventory is a challenge. There are so many challenges in this market right now that we can't control. However, what we can control is our mindset. And if you're able to step up and step in and lead in this space and be that confident agent who can educate your clients, what you believe will be how the spring market turns out. So what you believe you can do in this moment will determine your success this spring. If you can guide your clients, if you can inform them, if you can explain things simply and effectively, and you believe that you can do that, your mindset will be the thing that will drive your success this spring. Control what you can control. And your mindset is definitely one of those things. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope these visuals are something that you can share with your clients. Go out there, make videos, do everything you can to be that educated advisor, because if you think you can do it, you absolutely will, and you will have success this spring. As always, it's been a pleasure to be here for the monthly market report with you.